There are about 12,000 police departments patrolling jurisdictions across the United States, and more than half of those police vehicles driving through neighborhoods and cities are Fords. The second largest U.S. automaker in terms of sales is also the biggest purveyor of police vehicles.
So it's not a huge portion of Ford's business, but it's generally considered a fairly important part of the business, particularly because it's an area that they have dominated for a long time, going back at least, into the mid-1990s.
Automakers don't release detailed share and sales numbers for their law enforcement fleets, but Ford claims it has about 2/3 of the market. Much of the rest is made up by the other two Detroit automakers, General Motors, the largest U.S. car maker, and Fiat Chrysler. A large part of Ford's share belongs to the Ford Police Interceptor utility, which Ford says is the best-selling police vehicle in America, and alone accounts for half of all new police vehicles sold. The Interceptor utility is based on the Ford Explorer, the best-selling SUV of all time in America. The success of the Interceptor utility and the introduction of similar vehicles like it from its closest competitors show how U.S. police departments around the country are making some of the same changes to their fleets that ordinary customers are making in their own garages. Specifically, police cars are now increasingly police SUVs. And there are some pretty practical reasons why this is happening. There are several types of typical police vehicles used by departments. There are patrol cars, unmarked cars, special purpose vehicles such as vans, sport utility vehicles, and trucks, and motorcycles. Many police departments have even acquired military equipment in recent years, which has fueled controversy. But the vast majority of police vehicles are basically modified versions of those bought by the common consumer. Police departments buy their vehicles according to a pretty standard government purchasing process, though the details can vary depending on the size of the department or other circumstances. Typically, a department determines how many vehicles it needs and then solicits bids from at least 3 dealers. Contracts usually go to the lowest bid. There are some exceptions, such as hard-to-find vehicles only available from a single source. For a long time, police drove mostly sedans, outfitted to suit the needs of law enforcement officers. The earliest known motorized police vehicle was an electric car deployed in Akron, Ohio in 1899. It had a maximum speed of 18 miles per hour and could travel 30 miles on a charge. The vehicle was specially designed by the Collins Buggy Company, a local coach builder. With a cost of $2,400, it came equipped with a siren gong, lights, and a stretcher. It was first used to pick up an intoxicated man in the city. Later, it was pushed into the Ohio Canal during a riot. Until the mid-20th century, police cars were either specially built vehicles or ordinary cars custom-fitted with aftermarket upgrades. But in 1950, Ford saw an opportunity in serving the police market and became the first automaker to offer a dedicated police package. The company debuted the Interceptor name in 1951. Its strategy took off quickly. By 1961, Ford cars made up 58% of police vehicles in use in the 50 largest U.S. cities. Ford's American competitors had taken notice and began offering their own police packages, and at different times in history even controlled the market. Chrysler, in particular, dominated from about 1969 to 1985, mostly through its Plymouth and Dodge brands.
All the Chrysler divisions, Chrysler and Plymouth and Dodge, had a real strong showing in the world of police vehicles for a long time. I think Chrysler Corporation presented themselves as a high-performance company very effectively in that time in history, and I think that appealed to the police departments, and that's why they were able to score so many of the police contracts during that time.
In 1983, Ford introduced an Interceptor version of its Crown Victoria, a large, spacious sedan that was also a popular choice for taxicab drivers. There was also a police package for the Mustang, which ran from the early 1980s to the early 1990s. Another popular sedan was the Chevrolet Caprice, which at one point was outfitted with a Corvette engine, and was a leading choice from 1986 until the Caprice was discontinued in 1996.
The Chevy Caprice was the car of choice that kind of and we refer to it as like a spaceship-looking kind of bubble police car that just really took over because of its speed. You know, it had a Corvette engine if you had the right package. It had beefed up suspension. It had a lot of room in it, and the belief with all this size and extra metal around it that it would be safer when you get into a car accident.
For much of that time, departments did own SUVs and pickup trucks, but they tended to be special purpose vehicles, not used for patrolling. But as Americans overall began ditching their sedans and coupes for sport utilities and crossovers, police-badged SUVs started popping up throughout the country. Changes in vehicle manufacturing made them more popular as patrol vehicles. One issue that led to the switch, some police say, is that passenger cars started shrinking. At the same time, departments began stuffing police vehicles with ever greater amounts of equipment and technology.
Cars got smaller, particularly the interior. Some of that had to do with fuel efficiency, some of that had to do with safety, right? We built to absorb a crash a little better. But when they began to shrink in the interior, at the same time, we're putting more equipment in police cars. Before it was maybe a radar unit on the dashboard, and then that was it. Then we started to put partitions between the front seats and the rear seats. All this equipment's going in the interior of a car. At the same time, sedans of police vehicles are shrinking compared to those in the 80s and early 90s.
SUVs seemed to better meet the need for increased interior space and offered other advantages, such as ease of entry and exit. However, SUVs do have their drawbacks, and it comes down mostly to a question of physics. The key advantage of traditional passenger cars, such as sedans, is that their shape gives them a lower center of gravity than an SUV or truck and makes them more aerodynamic. An SUV's size and shape makes it more likely to roll over and generally tougher to handle than a comparable sedan. This is potentially a problem for cops who need to drive at high speeds, whether in pursuit of a suspect or in response to an emergency. But there have been many changes to vehicle design and engineering, even for consumer vehicles, that have greatly improved both driving experience and fuel economy for sport utilities. Sport utility vehicles used to be built the way pickup trucks still are. The body of the car, the roof, doors, side panels, and so on, was bolted onto the frame that housed the wheels, drivetrain, and other engineering components that made the car move. This is called body-on-frame construction. And actually, for most of automotive history, all cars were made this way. But manufacturing innovations led to the introduction of unibody construction, where the frame and the body are part of a single whole. This type of manufacturing was first common on passenger cars, while sport utility vehicles and pickups retained the body-on-frame approach. But over time, manufacturers began making SUVs, and in some cases pickups, with unibody construction. Unibody construction offers several advantages. It can make vehicles lighter, easier to handle, and even safer, since it can better absorb crash impacts. So today, many SUVs, such as the Explorer, are made with unibody construction and drive more like cars, in spite of their different shapes and sizes. The key word is more like cars. There are still some differences. They are still taller and have a higher center of gravity.
For years, it was the purpose of having a sedan was that they hugged the road a little better, and the possibility of a rollover was much less compared to an SUV. That's the sway bars and things within the vehicle that the manufacturers have put in there for law enforcement helps with that. But the Ford Explorer does not pursue the same as a Ford sedan police car. They just don't operate the same way.
So automakers tune their police SUVs differently than those sold to consumers. For example, vehicles such as the Ford Police Interceptor utility, the Chevrolet Tahoe Police Pursuit vehicle, and the Dodge Durango Pursuit sit lower on their wheels than the comparable consumer versions, and they have specially tuned suspensions and brakes to improve agility and handle the several hundred pounds of extra equipment in the vehicle. The other trouble with SUVs, and big vehicles in general, is that they tend to burn a lot of fuel. In October 2019, Ford said orders for its hybrid version of the Interceptor utility already comprised 19% of total orders for the 2020 model, which had been revealed that previous January. The company said it is the first pursuit-rated hybrid vehicle. The hybrid gets a combined 24 miles per gallon of gas. That may seem modest given what some vehicles are able to achieve in 2020, but it is a 41% improvement over the current Police Interceptor utility, equipped with a conventional 3.7-liter gasoline engine. At the time, Ford estimated departments could save $3,500 to $5,700 per vehicle annually in fuel costs. That is based on a range of fuel prices from $2.75 to $4.50 per gallon, and an average of 20,000 miles driven in a year. For large departments, this can save a tremendous amount of money. For example, the New York City Police Department has 36,000 officers, making it the largest local police force in the United States. In 2019, the NYPD said it aimed to make all of its 10,000 cars hybrid or electric within 5 years. All cop cars, SUV or otherwise, come with standard upgrades that make them better suited to perform at high speeds and improve their durability. These are vehicles that are heavily used every day for the 2 to 3 years they are usually in service.
One of the modifications they make on some of them is actually changing the hinge design on those doors to allow them to open wider. They did this on the Taurus and the Explorer to allow particularly the rear doors to open up at a wider angle to make it easier to get people in and out of the rear seat of those vehicles. So that's one of the practical changes they made. They also do things like upgrading the cooling systems and the brakes, to deal with that different duty cycle that those vehicles go through during the course of a day compared to what regular consumers have to deal with.
The improved cooling systems keep engines from overheating, and high-output alternators handle power demands that come with running lights, radios, and a cabin full of computer equipment.
As with many cop cars, the seats on the Interceptor utility are specially made with smaller bolsters on the sides to make it easier for officers to get in and out of the vehicle. Seat backs have anti-stab plates on them to prevent people in the back seat from, stabbing officers in the back. There are also bulletproof panels on the sides of the vehicle and a beefed-up rear end to protect it from collisions at high speeds. A lot of the lighting, radio, and computer systems, and even the grille guards are installed by third-party manufacturers. But some models now come stock with low-profile lighting systems that are integrated into the vehicle's visor, rear spoiler, and grille to improve visibility. There have also been many other recent innovations.
The new police cars with the connectivity, in a dispatch center, we could look on a map and see where all the cars are at one time. As the dispatcher is entering the information, it is looking for, based on the address, the closest vehicle that can respond.
There are now cameras in cars that record not only the activity in the car itself, but also what is happening in front of the vehicle.
In addition to the cameras that we have now in police cars, we can stream that image real time. So in a dispatch center, I can see what the cop can see on his or her dashboard right now. So building collapse, robbery, whatever it may be, as vehicles pull up, that data can stream. So police cars actually have their own modems in. So the back-end technology in these police cars is really impressive.
In 2020, Ford put a system in the Interceptor called Police Perimeter Alert. Motion sensors monitor a 270-degree area that extends up to 80 feet away. If the system detects something, it turns on the vehicle's rear camera, audibly alerts the passengers, rolls up the vehicle's windows, and locks the doors. Officers inside can watch their surroundings via motion trails displayed on instrument panels. Cars are also becoming pandemic ready. Ford debuted a software update in 2020 that raises a vehicle's cabin temperature to 133 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. The idea is to basically sterilize any surfaces that may have been exposed to the coronavirus. Fleet sales make up a relatively small share of an automaker's total. But some police say Ford has a pretty long history of serving law enforcement, which might partly explain the Police Interceptor's popularity. The Explorer might have also benefited from some good luck in the transition from cars to SUVs. The Interceptor utility seemed to hit a perfect sweet spot. It was bigger than the cars on offer at the time, but smaller than the other available police SUVs. Chevrolet touts the advantages of a larger vehicle, saying the Tahoe has 70 cubic feet of cargo storage in the back, more than 18 feet over the next largest competitor. The Interceptor utility also has some key stats in its favor. For example, tests done by the Michigan State Police determined it was the fastest vehicle of its class. To be sure, it is not the only player in the market, and its position is by no means secure. Even after the Police Interceptor utility was introduced in 2012, some sedans continued to sell well, such as the Dodge Charger, due in part to large contracts with big agencies such as the California Highway Patrol. And Ford's competitors, General Motors and Fiat Chrysler, offer police packages for several of their trucks and SUVs too. In 2019, Interceptor utility sales were 18,752, down 44.6% from the 33,839 sold in 2018. They were up 2.3% in 2018 over 2017. Finally, police in America have come under serious fire from critics, many of whom are calling for reform, and some of whom are calling for defunding law enforcement or outright abolition. According to a report from car blog Jalopnik, a group of Ford employees circulated a letter asking the company to reconsider its manufacture of police vehicles, and employees have brought up the issue in other venues. The employees cited concerns over the Ford name being associated with police at a time when officers are being criticized for the ways they treat Black Americans. In response, CEO Jim Hackett circulated a memo where he acknowledged he has been asked by people inside and outside the company to end Ford's police vehicle program. In the memo, Hackett condemned racism, expressed support for the Black Lives Matter movement, and said he is reviewing Ford's diversity and inclusion practices. Yet he also said it is uncontroversial to sell vehicles to police, that the criticisms plaguing police have nothing to do with the cars they drive, and that law enforcement plays an important role in the vitality and safety of society. Ford was not available for an on-camera interview for this story, but told CNBC the drop in sales in 2019 was due to the changeover to a redesigned Interceptor utility. The company added that it expected Interceptor utility sales for the third quarter of 2020 to be high. With respect to the employee letter, Ford said CEO Jim Hackett's response speaks for itself.
You know, these conventional police vehicles are not really the issue. It's more, the bigger issue is the militarization of police forces, and, you know, giving them, you know, surplus military vehicles, you know, armored vehicles. You know, that's a much bigger issue than, you know, whether they're driving around in Ford Explorers or Dodge Chargers or, you know, any other, you know, conventional vehicle.
Minneapolis's city council recently voted to disband its police force, and New York is reportedly taking steps to cut about $1 billion from its $6 billion budget. Police department budgets all over the country are potentially at risk, which poses serious questions for the companies that supply them.